Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOML. Today, we're actually starting a new book, and this book has two parts. So it's going to be an exciting book, and I can't wait to hear about how do we become a elephant whisperer.
Well, you already know how to elephant whisper, but we'll talk about it in a second.
Let's confirm what my suspicions.
The book that we're going to be talking about is The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion by the author Jonathan Haidt. He's the author that wrote The Happiness Hypothesis, which we haven't actually taled about yet. I was like, oh shit, because I had been saving it to write like a reflection of 5, and I just totally forgot to write even the first one.
So are we going out of order here?
No, yeah, a little bit, I guess.
Because the thing is, the elephant is a symbolic.
I talk about it in the reflection. Like I wrote about like what it means, like in terms of the happiness hypothesis.
Yeah, like I said, we need to clue people in on what we mean by the elephant and why we're whispering.
I explained it. I talk about the elephant all the time. I probably mentioned the elephant in at least like 50 reflections.
Yeah, me too.
People are probably like,
what are you talking about?
Elephants.
These guys are the elephants.
With that said, this book is called The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion by the same author of the Happiness Hypothesis, Jonathan Haidt. He is a social psychologist at, I think it's at NYU now, but he used to be at the University of Virginia. And this book is about morality. It was about cultures and how cultures are formed and why we do what we do. A lot of historical anthropology and morality conversations and like the origins of morality and
basically the history of human beings.
I mean, really, that's what it is. So I actually started this whole reflection with, I didn't read this book for a while. It sat in my anti-library for a really long time. And I love the author. Like The Happiness Hypothesis is one of my top 5 favorite books I've ever read. And I was like, I saw this book from him and I was like, the title of it was just so misleading. Like, I don't want to read a book about politics and religion. Like, I don't really care. Like, those two words are like poison to me. I hate politics.
Before this podcast, we're talking about how people use a word to mislead you.
Right.
Eating your greens is good for you. And then I say there are certain things that are not good for you.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think politics and religion is one of those things where people have leveraged it too much to have their personal gains, and it becomes more of a bad word in a way.
I mean, to a large extent, there are those two words you don't talk about at Thanksgiving, right? You don't talk about politics and religion. Like, nobody wants to talk about politics and religion. It's just like a dirty word, right? And I was like, man, why did he write a book about politics and religion?
One dirty word,
right?
One book.
It was literally just the title of this book that I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want anything to do with this, but he's one of my favorite authors. So, whatever. Why? I was like, all right, I'll give him a shot because he's Jonathan. And it was just so good. The Happiness Hypothesis was so good. I was like, this can't be that bad, right? And I'm really glad that I read this book. It was really, really good. It had nothing really to do with politics or religion at all, which was refreshing.
But yes, I'm curious to know why he put that in there.
I don't know. Like, I mean, I really don't, because it was basically more about, a lot of the stuff like in the Happiness Hypothesis about like why we do what we do, the psychology behind it.
I think politics and religion, in a way, it's another word for tribe or community.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
I think people kind of gather around a common belief. Same thing, that's certainly true for religion, and it's the same thing for politics, because politics is always about party. This party and that party.
Right.
I think the word maybe originally have a good meaning to it, meaning like tribe, community. But now that it's just like every time we hear of politics, we hear about all these, disasters in Washington. Says, one person do something kind of dirty laundry, another person do something. So that's all.
It's all scandal. It's all just scandal.
Yeah, exactly. And same thing with religion. Is somebody is trying to scam you, steal your belief, ruin your virtues and whatnot. So,
like, I mean, I'm 100% a believer in God and that kind of stuff. Faith is different than religion, just as like politics.
Religion is man-made.
It's the organized structure around something good is what religion is.
Faith is what religion is like. Okay, we think we have the same faith and we believe in the same thing. Let's do things together and let's form rules and this, that. That's why religion to me is nothing more than a man-made concept to organize this belief. And a lot of times this kind of breaks down your individuality, just because it's just like when you go into an organization like Salesforce, for example, they do have their core values, but whenever you go into their organization, you leave outside the door and you embrace theirs. And religion does the same thing. You go into that religion, you leave part of yourself outside, and that doesn't match. So to me, religion is, it's synonymous to organized belief. I mean, it's organizing your faith.
It's who cares what it's around? It's just an organization.
At the end of the day, it's somebody made up something. If you believe in it, you should also follow these rules and mesh.
I mean, why is there only two parts? I mean, we're getting. This is why you don't talk about fucking religion and politics, because now we're not. This isn't even what the reflection's about, and we're already talking about it, which is like, not to say that I wouldn't have this conversation with you, but this is exactly why I cannot stand talking about religion and politics. So when I saw this title, I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want anything to do with this. Like, this is not on my Your Magical Learning.
Yeah, that curiosity, right?
I know. I was curious.
I think you give us a path forward to focus on the real reflection, which is how to become an elephant whisperer.
Exactly. So luckily, I found that Jonathan Haidt still wrote a Jonathan Haidt book, and I was captivated by it. It was such great psychology and deep dive into why we do what we do as humans. Then he would bring it up a little bit to politics and religion, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. That said, there was a certain portion of the book that he started to talk about being an elephant whisperer, and it just stopped me like dead in my tracks. So the happiness hypothesis, it was all about the elephant and the writer. The elephant is your subconscious, your intuitive, all the stuff that operates on autopilot in your body, what you've been nurtured into, what you were naturally born into, like everything that goes into why you do what you do every single day on autopilot, like that's your elephant, right?
Yeah, that's synonymous with system one.
System one,
the thinking fast.
Exactly. And then you have your writer, which is system two, which is your rational brain. It doesn't really have a whole lot of control. The elephant does all the work 99% of the day. And, maybe every once in a while that writer that sits on top of the elephant can point out a blind spot.
It's like you have to influence the elephant. Because you cannot do, the elephant will do its thing. The only way you have to, if you want him to make changes, is you have to talk to the elephant and make it understand, and it will do it. You have no control over the things that it does. You cannot do what it does. Because if you do, like, for example, breathing, if you say, I'm going to take over my breathing, you're going to die because you're going to forget to breathe. But the elephant or the system one always breathe, regardless whether you forget it or you are distracted by something else, it's still going to do its work. And it's still going to do, like, you walking and you're breathing, right? Walking requires balancing. Because you think about who can stand on 2 feet. It requires a lot of balancing. And
it requires a lot of work. Luca tried to figure this whole thing out right now, and you're like, the kid falls 30,000 times a day down to his knees, and then he just knee walks because he's like, I'm tired of trying to figure out this balance thing. Give my elephant a break. This is what my elephant knows how to do. I'm just gonna go knee walk everywhere. You're right. Like, I mean,
right. But you think that he cannot tell his elephant to say, "Hey, I need to walk."
Yeah. Walk,
so you can influence by nudging it. But it's gonna take it as a habit, like as a request. So eventually the elephant understands your request. Say, okay, I think this is what you want me to do, so he'll do it. Whether you want to say, hey, I want to be like Wim Hof and be able to breathe in a way that can breathe in a low oxygen environment, for example. You can't just say, okay, for 1 second, I'm going to be controlled by breathing, right? You can't. You're only influenced by telling, hey, this is, I'm blowing in and blowing out air. That's what you do, but the breathing is still taken over by the elephant itself. Yeah. You cannot just, I'm taking over. It's not possible. So to me, and I want to know how to become an elephant whisperer, because that's, to me, is a great way for us to train the elephant to get them to understand the core values that we hold.
So in this particular book, when he's going through like morality and he's going through like culture and he's going through brain evolution and how we think and all this other stuff that he talks about in this book, right? He says he went way deeper with this analogy from the happiness hypothesis into this book of the elephant and the writer and how this all works and stuff like that, right? In different ways that it manifests itself and similar stuff that you're talking about, right? Well, at some point during the book, he was like, if you really want to know the secret of communication with other people, it's be an elephant whisperer. So like what we were just talking about politics, right? Understanding that it's about group dynamics. It's about, organized rules. It's about the underlying faith. It's about how people, care about what they care about, really only listen to themselves. It's about being altruistic, but at the same time being altruistic with the selfish gene. It's about all the stuff that we've been and then like, it just hit me like a ton of bricks where you're like, shit, this is every book that we freaking read. And we talk about all the time: 48 Laws of Power, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Who Moved My Cheese, Endure, Alchemy, Atomic Habits, Why Buddhism is True, The Warrior Within, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Sapiens, The Body, The Culture Code, Nudge, Thinking Fast and Slow, Black Swan, Human Code, Nonviolent Communication, Why We Sleep. Like, you want to talk about being an elephant whisperer? Understand humanity and why we do what we do, and then you can then start to do what you said with like nudge. This is when we talked about nudge in the past, right? Then you can start to nudge people, right? And then you can start to really be that elephant whisperer to say like, look, I understand you, elephant. I understand what's going on right now to a certain extent. I know I can't change that, and I know I can't change other people's stuff, but I understand it, at least at a conceptual level, where I can start to then set the strategic, be a gardener, not a Moses, right? Plant the seeds and slowly but surely help to. I'm going through this right now with my new team, right? Like, I can't just have them walk into the door and be like, hey guys, you're all club meeting members, and this is what you're going to do, and this is how your brain's going to work, and this is what you're going to think about. Like, you can't do that. Like, they're going to go like, you're fucking nuts. I've spent an entire lifetime of getting to this point in time of doing what my elephant does. So I have to take that into account and put that all together and be an elephant whisperer for all these people and slowly nudge them over time, to have their writers engage and make it their own ownership of this stuff. What would you go back and tell your 20-year-old self, that you would tell yourself now, like the biggest piece of advice you would give yourself back then? I come to the conclusion that it's nothing. Like, the elephant has been trained to do whatever the elephant's been trained to do. There is no piece of advice that I'm going to give my 20-year-old self that's going to change what that 20-year-old is going to do the next day or the next day after that. Maybe I can influence it over 2 years or a year or 6 months or something like that, of nudging the elephant in a certain direction, to be a gardener, not a Moses kind of thing. But at the end of the day, like, I can't really do anything, and neither can you. If I can't do anything from a secondary perspective, I mean, you sure as shit are the only one that can do anything to your own elephant. But long story short, like, that's the idea of being an elephant whisperer. If you really want to be a gardener, be an elephant whisperer, right? And be able to understand what that elephant cares about and how that elephant works and how that elephant thinks, and guide that journey. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got?
What's your question?
Oh, my question is, what do you know about how your elephant works?
Okay, so I think first of all, we need to talk about what an elephant is and why it is important.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, the elephant is going to govern everything that you do. And the elephant cannot speak your language. It has its own language. So I guess people familiar with the whisperer, right? The ghost whisperer, the dog whisperer, the horse whisperer, right? So the elephant whisperer is in the same way. You have to find a way, you have to talk in the language of the elephant. So you have to talk in the language of the ghost, the horses, the dog, whatever. So the elephant whisperer, an elephant is your subconscious. Elephant is your instinct. It's your system one. It's your
automatic being. You're thinking fast. It just does it.
Right. And superhero of your life. Yep. And I think, for me, I've been interested in this phenomenon for a while now in my world, right? Because I'm a programmer. So for me, I've always asked myself, how do I reprogram my subconscious?
Yep.
And that's the same thing as elephant whisperer. And to me, this is the best way for us to figure out how to make ourselves the way we want to be. How do we get the elephant to understand us and be able to, because when we have our conscious will be able to do the creativity, I guess the newness and the whatever that we see, we can incorporate and we can learn, just like we learn from other people and like learn how to fish, learn how to play tennis or whatever. We can take that, but we need to make sure that the elephant understand what we want them to become. That requires a subtle art of that language. And that language is different. And that's why when you mention the atomic habits, for example, like your elephant cannot understand, you say, hey, I want to be a good person. I want to be a more productive person. I want to be more, whatever, be more responsible person or nicer person. You can't tell an elephant by saying, hey, I want to be nicer.
Yeah,
You
you
have
can tell
to
your writer.
have,
The writer can tell you that. The writer can rationalize. Yeah,
you
well, I
are
mean,
the right.
yeah,
The
right,
writer, the writer is system two, which is your conscious
right.
mind.
Well, but
And
they're both conscious. Like, I mean, the elephant is conscious as well. The elephant just operates on a different operating system than the writer.
it's got subconscious.
But it's
You
conscious.
have the conscious and subconscious. Subconscious is where the piece of the iceberg that's beneath the water.
Sure, but it's still conscious. Like, it's still consciousness.
Subconscious.
I know, but it still operates on like the operating system of our brain is still, it's still our brain. Like, it's not like it's some different operating unit that it's
just
using.
you have two systems, regardless of what you want to call it. System one, system two. Your elephant is system one, and the rider is system two.
Right.
Right. You are both of them. You are not the elephant. You are the elephant. But from the perspective of the system in the relationship of the two systems, right? The conscious is the rider. You're not the rider and somebody else is the elephant. No, you're not. You are both. You have both systems. So
yes,
I don't want to confuse people and say, hey, you ride the elephant, and what the hell is the elephant? You are both. You are both the elephant and the rider. The rider in this reference is basically your conscious, your frontal cortex, and the elephant is all of your other brain. Is the midbrain, the hindbrain, the medulla, everything. That is the biggest part of your evolution comes before you become conscious. That all these layers has been built for a million years before the frontal cortex become added onto your brain. And so the elephant is the oldest part of the system, and then the new system, the rider, is newer in terms of the timeline. And so you are both system one and system two. It's just that the rider is that part. It's not to say that you are a reference to the rider. You are not the rider.
Right.
You are both of them. So in order for us, quote unquote, because we as a unit can talk to the rider.
Correct.
And the rider can nudge the elephant. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So that's what I'm saying is you have two systems, and the ability for us because we can speak a language, like we can tell brain, hey, don't think of a white elephant. Well, we as a whole talks to the rider. The rider speak English because it has control of the language as well, so it can speak English. And so we tell the rider, and the rider tells the elephant, but the elephant does not speak English because the part of the speech is not part of that subconscious or automatic brain. It doesn't do it. So that means that there is a connection between your rider and the elephant, and that connection is not what we think it is. And so that's why I think it's important for us to figure out how to communicate with our subconscious or system one or the elephant. And the only way that I've seen so far is to build a habit. You tend to do the same thing over and over and basically reference the action with some kind of a term that you do. And if you do that enough, it creates this connection. And
it's method acting. It's what we talk like. You have to tell your rider to method act to your elephant until that elephant, it just becomes you. And then it's like the reciprocal kind of loop,
Right. So
action,
like, action is actually the language that as far as I come to believe, the action is a language that the elephant can understand. So nudging, the habits, these basically channel those actions to tell your elephant what he needs to do. And essentially, I mean, you're talking about, like, for example, 7 habits of highly effective people. You're talking about first thing first, right? You are telling the elephant, okay, I'm doing this over and over. The first thing I do is I gotta do the thing that's important to me. So you are basically you turn that into an action. Something with the atomic habits, you turn it into an action. The action is what the elephant can understand. It's not your thoughts that it will understand. It's only action. For example, you started doing the Wim Hof, right? And you were able to hold your breath for like 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes.
The best I've ever done is 310, but that was a while ago. I've regressed. I don't know why. I feel like I'm like at.
But what I'm saying is because your elephant, when you hold your breath for like 60 seconds, they start to panic.
Right.
right? But because you did the exercise, the action, eventually you say, hey, 2 minutes, it's not a big deal. 3 minutes, no big deal. That's what I'm saying is a lot of the Navy SEAL can hold their breath for at least 6 minutes or more. Now, 6 minutes is not.
I know. I Googled it. I'm just saying I can't. My elephant, my writer can't.
But I'm just saying,
like, you know what's funny is my writer can't even mentally even think about how I would even get to that point in
you know
time.
what?
So I definitely can't train my elephant.
Nudge the elephant.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. My writer doesn't believe that that's possible in my own mind, like at this point in time. So therefore, I can't even go. I can't.
I mean,
I
the
can't
thing, if you believe it can be done, you won't even attempt.
I agree.
And then basically that's it. That's the line you draw on, and there's not crossing. You're not crossing it.
My elephant's gonna keep walking the same damn path.
because your rider is not nudging it. The rider say, right. Okay, I don't believe you, whoever you are, Chris. I don't believe you.
My rider said this. That's fucked.
The rider said, no, I'm not doing anything to my elephant. Right. But rider is essentially what you do is you tell the rider, I want to be able to have a better, like when you run, you have a lot of sinuses issues, right? You want to tell your rider, hey, I want to be able to run without having these sinus blocking me, breathing and all that. So basically you say, well, I need you to do this, which is learn how to breathe using the Wim Hof method. And the consciousness is actually making you breathe in. And that breathing is essentially talking to the elephant. And the elephant whisperer eventually say, well, if Chris holds his breath for a minute, I shouldn't panic. I shouldn't throw up these alerts and sensors and alarms. I let him go to the next one. And then eventually you can hold your breath for 3 minutes. I can only hold my breath for like 30 seconds, 40, 50 max. I mean, I start out with 30 seconds and then I go up to 50 seconds, right? But for you to do it 3 times as long as me, I think people can probably, on average, hold for 1 minute.
I don't know. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, when you told me 6 minutes, I was like, Jesus Christ! Like, I didn't even know they could sit. If you just told me to sit somewhere for 6 minutes without moving, I would be like, I can't do that. Like, I know. I mean, if you told me to do that without, just sit there for 6 minutes, you can breathe, but just sit somewhere for 6 minutes and don't move. I would be like, I don't know that I could do that, let alone hold my breath for 6 minutes. It's hard enough for me to just sit there. It took me a while to train my elephant, if you will, to just sit somewhere for 20 minutes while I do these breathing exercises. Like, that was hard enough. To think that I would to do that I'm trying to even wrap I told you the worst challenge I've ever done was the 10 minutes of boredom. Like, I couldn't just sit in a fucking chair for 10 minutes.
That's the thing, is about training the elephant, because there's a story of the elephant, his foot got tied to little wooden pole, right, when he was young, and he kept tugging at it, and he couldn't get out. But when he becomes this gigantic elephant as an adult, when he tug on it, there's tiny little rope, right? He tug on it, and he doesn't even attempt to yank it because he's been trained to know, hey, this rope is on my foot or my leg, whatever. I couldn't get out, and it was trained to do that. So same thing is your elephant is trained to react to certain things, like when a horse gets spooked, for example, right? It's spooked because it has some kind of experience or was trained to react to it. So this is the same thing. When we hold our breath for more than 60 seconds, it starts to get spooked, right? It's not because it couldn't hold it or because something is going to get damaged. It gets spooked because it was trained that way. So it's retraining your elephant. You have to go to 2 steps. The first step is you have to let the rider understand and believe you that, hey, it's possible to do a 6 minute hold. Same thing with the book you read, like the marathon runner or whoever it is, they mentioned about somebody breaking the 4 minute mile. Only until somebody broke it, and then like 3 months later, somebody else broke that, and then broke more and more and more. But up until that, everybody believes that no one is not humanly possible to break a 4 minute mile. Then for the longest time, I don't know how long, but for like decades, no one has ever even break it because the belief held them at bay. And the belief is what the rider has to accept. And once the rider accepts, it can do the actions to train the elephant to say, well, this little rope that's tied to a little stick is not going to hold me. I can just yank it because I'm much bigger now. but that has to go through the two layers that we're talking about. It's the rider and elephant.
The rider's got to believe.
The rider has to believe. And that's the secret to whispering to the elephant is you have to tell the rider to believe. And once the rider believes, the rider needs to turn that into an action for the elephant to.
I love that. How do you communicate with an elephant? Like that's the whole point about being an elephant whisperer. Communicate, like you said, through habits.
Exactly, because we're talking about the force whisper, right?
We got to bring it all full circle though. Like make sure when you're communicating to your elephant that you're communicating the values that you all care about. So the elephant and the rider can go in the direction that both of you want to go. And like, because if you're communicating the wrong because you can believe, believe the wrong thing and then go guide your elephant to go do the wrong thing.
It's exactly what I'm saying.
Make sure
elephant little rope, right? That's tied to this little stick on the ground. Little, one of those tiny little stake on the ground. That's what they do in elephant training. In the younger years, like when it was born, it get put a tiny little stake on a wooden stake on the ground, and it just basically put it onto the ground and then tie a rope onto his leg, and it couldn't get out. But when he like a couple of years later, when he comes like the humongous elephant, one tiny little stake can hold that elephant because he believes that is what holds him. He believed he couldn't get out. So it also means that if you train the elephant to do something that is not fitting for you or for your life, it becomes that as well. I mean, if you believe in the wrong thing, then it's always going to affect you that way.
I agree. And you're talking about personal elephant management, right? And then there's also interpersonal elephant management. So
it has to go from the step ladder, right? You have to be able to do the intrapersonal before you do interpersonal, because it's not going to be easy for me to communicate with you about certain things that if I don't know anything about myself. I have to understand about myself first before I say, hey, Chris, this is who I am. And this is how I do things. And complement it in a way that, make it a win-win. And that creates this interpersonal communication.
I don't know if you caught this portion of it, but that's what Clubany is. It's the training ground. We're training ourselves. We're training our elephants first, figuring out how to communicate with our own elephant first and get our own rider to believe in our own self and then communicate that to those commands driven by our values. And then we're connecting that with other people, and that's called Clubany. Like, I mean, that's really what it is.
It's an elephant training ground.
Yeah, right. Well, plus it's an elephant playground as well. Like once your elephant's trained, then you can go play with other elephants and you guys can all, be marching in the same direction. I mean, like it's literally that's what Clubany is, right? It's an ecosystem to ensure that everyone's elephants and riders will be able to engage in meaningful work and develop meaningful relationships they need to live.
Why is it an elephant and not a beaver? Ding.
It's because Jonathan Haidt talked about it. All right, you could call it a beaver, and then see, here's why it's an elephant and not a beaver.
Not a horse. Not a horse. I just had to try to put a beaver in there somewhere.
Well, you got your beaver in for the night. I think the elephant, personally, for me, holds so much more validity because I can imagine moving a beaver. Like I can imagine just going, you know what? Fuck you, beaver. I'm going to pick you up and put you over here, right? Like, like I can manhandle a beaver. No one can imagine manhandling an elephant. Those things are immovable objects unless they want to. Like nobody's going to go tell an elephant, no human being is going to go walk up to an elephant and go, you go there, and they're going to go, okay, well, I don't know what else to do. Like, I mean, like there's that's why the elephant metaphor holds water for me mentally, because I can imagine.
I agree.
Like,
it does.
Never being able to
have more,
manhandle.
it does have more, I guess, characteristics of representing a subconscious or because the thing is the iceberg underneath, right? You can't move it. It's huge.
You can't physically move it. You can mentally move your elephant, like by doing what we've been talking about.
Which is training. You cannot right now. Even if you go into the jungle and you find an elephant, right, and you're trying to tame it, you can't tame it. There's no way for you to tame it. It's only trained for over a long period.
I ended up reading a book that we'll talk about way down the road. It was called The Elephant Whisperer. It was a great book. Honestly, I loved it so much. And
so there is
a book called The Elephant Whisperer. It's by this author named Lawrence Anthony, and it's an awesome book. It is so good. It's about actual elephants, right? And this guy owns.
So it's actually whispering to an elephant.
Sort of. So this guy owns a game preserve in South Africa, and this ranch is called Tula Tula. It's an African safari game preserve kind of thing. He's big into conservation of animals, and he grew up in South Africa. He wanted to own a game preserve. So he and his wife moved back from England and bought it, and they lived on this game preserve. Well, one day he gets a call from this other game preserve in another area of Africa, and they're like, hey, we have these 9 elephants that are crazy, and they're like destroying our fences, and like, I'm gonna shoot them. Like, he was like, if you don't take them by next week or whatever, I'm just gonna kill them. And he was like, don't do that. He was like, I'll take them. So he inherits these unruly herd of elephants led by this mama elephant and her sister and their kids or whatever. So basically this guy has to figure out how to keep these elephants in check because they're pissed. Like, they've been abused, they were hurt, like they had watched somebody kill one of their other herd mates to try to prove a point from the human being. Like, these elephants are really, really smart. So this whole book was about dealing with elephants, understanding how smart and amazing they are, but also at the same time how gentle they can be and how to communicate with them and get them to have mutual respect for each other, manhandle an elephant. He was like, there's a charging elephant, you're screwed. Like, I mean, and like they're vicious. They can be vicious. Like, I mean, you don't think of them as, but yeah.
It's very similar to our subconscious.
Yeah.
Maybe give us some clue on how to whisper to our subconscious.
He actually passed away, sadly. It was a few years after he wrote The Elephant Whisperer. I think he had a heart attack or something and passed away, the author of the book. His wife actually wrote another couple books about their life together and stuff like that. Still runs the ranch. But I swear to God, someday I'm going to go to Tula Tula. That was my reflection. This is way down the road, but there was a book called The Elephant Whisperer, and it was really good.
Sounds interesting.
It was really good. I mean, I really enjoyed it. There was one little baby elephant that was born that it just reminded me of Amelia, actually, because she for whatever weird reason, she had some like hoof issue when she was born, and she couldn't stand. So I guess like elephants are supposed to be able to stand like immediately, and if they can't, like they're in a lot of trouble. So it was like, so the elephant was born, and unfortunately, like they spent like the whole herd spent like 3 days out in the sweltering sun with like no water, no nothing, like trying to get this elephant to stand up, and the baby elephant, and it just couldn't walk. And so they literally gave it everything they possibly could, and the baby was just dying. They finally, after doing everything, it basically almost dying themselves as the herd, this guy was watching all this happen from afar because you can't really get too close to these animals because they were on like a wild preserve. As soon as the elephants left, they zoomed in to see if the baby elephant was still alive, and she was, just barely. So then they rushed her off back to their actual ranch area, and they tried to save it, and they brought it into the house, and they got it nursed back to health and started walking slowly but surely, and it was growing, it was getting bigger. And then unfortunately, like something happened later on down the road, the baby died, and it was just awful. But it just reminded me of like Amelia and just how strong animals can be, and like enduring what they can endure. I don't know, there was a whole lot about this book that I loved. It was a really good book. Yeah. Any final thoughts about being an elephant whisperer?
I mean, an elephant has their own language, and so figure out that language. And as far as I believe, it only happens through actions.
I love that. Actually, I really like that insight. I think,
like I said, I spent a number of years kind of chewing on this topic because reprogramming my subconscious was a topic of interest for me. I love programming, and I'm a science nerd. I have a degree in chemistry, just so people know. But I love programming as well. So programming subconscious is something that I had an interest in for years. The only thing I could come up with was the action is the only thing that your brain, your subconscious understands.
I agree. But I love the other side of it where you said, for a writer, what that's fueled off of is belief. Because you're right. Like it's like,
because like I said, if you don't believe that you can hold your breath for 6 minutes, you're not going to attempt. So therefore, you're not going to relay the message to the elephant. So it stops right there.
Yep.
Regardless of what your capacities are, it's not going to get attempted.
Agreed. Not only will not. So one of the rules that I gave the new team was like, I don't really care. It's like Ted Lasso. You watched Ted? Have you watched Ted Lasso?
No.
Oh my God, you got to watch Ted Lasso. It's so good. It's like the best show on TV, or I think it's on Apple TV or something like that. It's so good. One of his, he has this corny little sign that like the first episode, he's this former football coach that gets hired to be a professional soccer coach, and he doesn't know anything about soccer. He just puts the sign above his door that said believe in like handwritten writing or whatever. That's one of his big things, is just believe, right? Well, I know it's corny to say, but it's true. You either believe or you don't. And if you don't,
believing is open. If you don't believe, the door is shut. So,
exactly.
I mean, if you want to do anything, you have to open the door. So if you don't believe you can do it, then you won't. If you believe you can, or you believe you can't, you're right.
That's true. Yeah. It reminds me of one of the earliest books we did was Give and Take by Adam Grant. The reflection title of that one was Begin Each Relationship with Belief, right? It was about the tax attorney professor that had the highest grades of any class in the state of North Carolina year after year. And they were like, what do you do that's so different? He was like, I don't do anything. I just believe they can do it. And I tell them that from the first day. And, he's like, I don't care if they come from an accounting background or mathematical background, or if they just come from, somebody that wants to, that used to work at a Home Depot that wants to, become an accountant. Like, I don't care. Like, I mean, I believe they can do it, and I tell them they can do it. And sure, they ended up doing it. Like, it's, and there you go. They pass their CPA and they get really high scores. And you're like, that's it? That's your secret? And he's like, I just
because
believe in them.
that's like half the battle.
Right.
Right.
So I love that the writer needs to
believe
and then communicate with action to your elephant.
Communicate with actions. That's my hypothesis. My belief thus far is, I've looked at many different things, many different ways to influence or nudge your automatic system. And like I say, I haven't found anything other than the actions. And based on some of the books that we've read, that reaffirms what I believe to be true.
I agree. Well, I love it. All right. Well, that was a fun one. We got one more of this one coming up next. And
can't wait. We'll do that Monday.
Yep. Can't wait. Awesome. All right. We'll see y'all soon.
And good night.